Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Inuit, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Cynthia Stevens, and I'll be chairing the hearing this morning. Joining me from the Board of Revision is Kent Seelan and Carrie Linkletter. From the Assessment Department, we have Mr. Jonathan Spacek and Ms. Prabdeep, and our administrative personnel this morning is Zachary Moan. The Zoom participants in the hearing, please note you are placed in a waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you will be admitted into the meeting. Kindly follow along in the City of Winnipeg's Board of Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close your mute or YouTube player. You will then be permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing is concluded, you can leave the meeting. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. We will receive the Board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 1 through 7 on our docket today. Mr. Mullen, please affirm the assessors and the applicant's testimony. Thank you.
Madam Chair. Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
My name is Jonathan Spacek.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, yes.
Thank you. Madam Assessor, please state your full name.
My full name is Prabdeep Korpawar.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Rocky Neufeld.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So the first item on the docket this morning is 1200 Henderson Highway. I'll get you to read the roll number, Mr. Spacek, but before we get there, just checking there are no preliminary issues with this property.
I have no preliminary issues.
Okay, great, thank you. So please proceed to read it onto the roll and give us your evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are looking at file number 24-4107. This is roll number 0400014780. We have a 2025 assessed value of $1,549,000. This is a bank located at a credit union located at 1200 Henderson Highway. It is owner occupied. We are looking at a 1980s built with, again, no major renovations from what I could find. So original, it still has the effective years of 1980. So it's one of our older banks. We have a gross floor area of 8,040 square feet with a leasable area of 7,740 square feet. This is, you can see on page 2 how the bank looks, parking lot beside it, entry off of Henderson Highway. And if you scroll down, you'll notice on page 4, there's just an aerial view of where it is. So we're located on Henderson Highway. We're just south of Chief Peguis Trail. For the banks today, you can see I've included a list of comparables, and you'll notice it's the same list of comparables for all the banks we have in credit unions. So there's just 12 comparables. These are net leases we were able to find. You'll see all the start dates of these leases are from 2019 up till January 1st, 2023. So again, we tried to find the most recent leases we could for these banks. We have a range of banks across the city. Comparable one, again, we're looking at 1219 Grant. This is a 1961 built bank, 6,713 square feet at $30. Is comparable number two, 2785 Pembina. This is a 2007 built bank, a 5-year lease, 6,351 square feet at $33 a square foot. My third comparable is 270 St. Anne's. This is a 2004 built bank, lease 2019 for 5 years, 5,800 square feet at $36.70. Comparable for 2799 Pembina, we have a 1996 built bank, leased, signed 2023, 4,500 square feet for $31 a square foot. Comparable number 5, 1300 Pembina, 1952 built bank, 5-year lease, 12,000 square feet at $19.83 a square foot. 23 Portage, this is one of our downtown banks. This is built 1985. It's a 3-year lease for 9,765 square feet at $18 a square foot. And then 235 Marion, again, a bank in St. Boniface, 1960 built, 5-year lease, 2,200 square feet approximately at $18.74. 2260 Phillips is comparable number 8, 1998 built. We have a 6,138 square foot bank at $40.76 a square foot. We have 1100 Taylor. This is comparable 9. It's a 2018 built bank with a 10-year lease, 5,100 square feet at $47 a square foot. 3247 Portage is comparable number 10. This is a 2000 built bank, 5,384 square feet, $29 a square foot. And then finally, 900 Harrow Street is comparable number 12. We have a 1997 built bank. 2021, the lease was signed for 1 year, 6,164 square feet at $23 a square foot. So you can see we have a range of approximately $18 on the low end, up to $47 on the high end. These comparables are used for all of our banks and credit unions today. So I just wanted to go through them once. And again, average of $30 a square foot and median of $30 a square foot. If we work up to how these banks are valued, we turn to page 7. This is the income approach workup for this property. So we have 4,020 square feet on the main floor, model driven rent of $25.08. And then we have substandard basement space, 3,720 square feet of basement space at $4.34 a square foot. So this works out to a total leasable area of 7,740. And you'll see that our bank parameters for the 2025 cycle, we have a vacancy loss of 2%, expenses at 3%, shortfall at $8, and a model-driven cap rate of 7.1%. This is a total value of $1,549,000. I've just included page 11 going forward, the mailer that was sent in by the owner. Again, this is an owner-occupied bank. They've shown the expenses, and they've shown their total leasable area on the right-hand side of page 11, 4,020 square feet on the main, and they're reporting 4,020 square feet of basement space. So again, that is my presentation. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, any questions?
Yes, I do. Page 7. This is this a model generated valuation specific to banks?
Yes.
How do you delineate or divide whatever a bank from a typical retail operation?
Like what is the difference, or what would you like?
Yeah, what's the physical difference between them?
You know what? Banks often have a vault is one of the major differences. Again, they're most often a one-story building, not from my understanding, depending when it was built with what materials. Again, we're using rental rates based on what's reported from other banks for the income approach, and then model-driven cap rates, again, based on year built, where they're located. Pretty standard. I don't know what major differences there are.
Sorry, I was just looking at the difference between retail, and I picked up vault one story?
Well, 1 to 2 story usually. Some banks are 2 story.
And what else?
Again, that's it all depends. There's such a wide range of retail. I don't know what you're looking for.
Well, I should, I'm not allowed to explain my questions in advance, but I don't know what the difference is between retail and banking. We rent them both in the same shell, so I want to know how the city decides they're special.
Well, again, banks I think are a little different in the sense that you go in, you usually have a area where there's a teller, right? There's offices in the back where there's working like their retail stores are set up differently. There might be an office in the back in some, but again, when I go to a pet food store, for example, it's different than a bank. They're not the same, but right? They have
Well,
ATMs. Like again, there's a difference between a bank and a standard retail in its use. And again,
doesn't every retail have a counter for their cash register?
yeah. Again, but usually a bank is a portion of it is offices, and there's usually a vault in the back. It's
And
right.
you mentioned, sorry.
That's the biggest difference to me. That's what I'm
And
trying
you
to say.
mentioned ATM. Doesn't every convenience store and every hotel have an ATM in it these days?
Some do. So there's not as many ATMs probably, but there are some ATMs in convenience stores.
Did you assess ATMs?
I mean, we have, but currently I don't believe there's that many standalone ATMs to assess.
Half the buildings, office buildings on Broadway, as a matter of fact, virtually anything built before the mid 1970s have vaults in them. Do you assess those vaults?
Well, we're not assessing the vault separately in this situation. I'm just saying the difference between a standard retail store, like for example, where I go and buy pet food, they don't have a vault, but a bank, when you go into a bank, it has a vault. That's just, I'm trying to explain one of the differences. I don't have much more to say on it.
Do you include vaults in my building, 305 Broadway? We had a vault every floor. Do you include that in the assessed value as a factor?
Well, no, I'm not. I'm not saying I'm not saying there's a vault value being assessed separately as your building on Broadway.
And what do you do with a vault when the bank leaves?
Again, whatever it gets turned into, if it's being converted into something else, it will be under that classification for assessment. So if it became a separate building, it would be under that classification. Whether they turn that vault into an office or they kept it for looks, I don't know what everybody does with the vault these days.
Well, a vault is basically part of the framing. So don't you, when you leave as a bank, create an obsolescence in space?
It depends what it's converted into, honestly. It's the person will go in and see what every building is converted differently into a different use. At whatever that use is, it will be assessed at that classification to try to get the most accurate value.
The capitalization rates, page 9. Do you have a category for banks?
No, the capitalization rate. No, there's no, because we're using this chart on here. For example, the OFA, OFB, OFS. We're trying to show what the city of Winnipeg percentiles do compared to Colliers, CBRE, Cushman Wakefield. There's no comparisons to be made, so it's again not included on this sheet.
Well, which category is it derived from any of these categories?
You know what? I don't know how they model the bank capitalization rates exactly, but we don't. Again, the sheet is more for comparison, and we don't have anything compared to because there's no other companies that are presenting bank ranges, from my understanding. That's why it's not on the chart.
Okay, and has there been a investment sale of a banking building in the last 3-4 years?
Yeah, I'm unaware of the actual sales of banks and how many sales there's been in the last 3 years.
Well, if I put to you that I know there's only been 2 in the last decade, do you think that's an ample enough sample size to generate a site-specific bank capitalization rate?
I think if you have that in your presentation, you're going to show that, that'd be great. I don't have it. I don't have anything on the.
No, just your opinion. Is 2 sales in 10 years a good sample size?
No, it's not great.
Okay. Sorry, my fault. I didn't ask that question right. In terms of the basement, do you have basement rents in your workup?
No, I've included no basement rents. This is there's not a ton of banks with from my understanding, basement space being used. We have it as our standard substandard basement, so it's most likely being used as storage, and we've put $4.34 rent on it.
Is it marketable on for as a sorry, I was in a hearing very late yesterday, and my words are a little fuzzy. Is it separately marketable, the basement, as rentable space?
No, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to rent it separately. I think this basement space is going to be thrown in with the main floor rent, and maybe that main floor rent's a little bit higher if we don't include the basement, however you want to look at it.
How many of your comparables have basements?
I'm unaware if any of them even have basements, but I don't know offhand.
And is there a difference in the city's parameters between chartered banks and credit unions?
Parameter wise, no, we just have them under bank credit union.
Do you know in your chart how many of these are chartered banks?
Like, sorry, can you explain chartered bank, the definition to me so I can tell you?
Like a credit union is been granted its license, or whatever you want to call it, under the basis of following rules of a credit union. There's a requirement to have deposits and a community-based deposit, and not lend money out that you don't have. That's one of the major things.
Yeah, thank you. That's perfect. I just want to make sure we're on the
But
same
there's
page.
different banking rules. A chartered bank
the first 11 comparables on my page 6 are chartered banks, and then the 12th comparable is a credit union.
Okay, so you have one credit union.
Comparable number 12 is a credit union. Comparable 1 through 11 are different banks across the city.
Chartered?
Again, from what you're telling me, yes, chartered banks.
Okay, and number 6, are you aware that has closed?
230 Portage. No, I wasn't aware it was closed. I know it's downtown, $18 a square foot, but the lease ran out 2023. So if it's closed now, yeah, it could be. I would believe you.
Okay. And on your page 7, you have a vacancy rate of 2%, and where does that come from?
I don't know how exactly it's modeled, but I can make the assumption that we don't have a ton of vacant banks.
You are now, in the past 10 years, we've seen amalgamations of access from, I don't know, 6 smaller credit unions. We have a Assiniboine credit union.
Mr. Neufeld, you're presenting evidence rather than asking questions.
Yeah, I think the last time I asked a question, he wanted to know the background for it, and
I'm fine if you present the vacancy under yours, if you have an argument with it.
Present evidence. Let's just say, how has the assessment department dealt with the fact that there have been tremendous amalgamations of credit unions in the last 10 years and closures of numerous branches? Has that not impacted your estimate of a vacancy rate?
Our banks, when we look at them, we analyze the mailers that come in. We check again, we're looking at the information sent in as of the reference date, and it's showing for, on our end, very little vacancy. And that's why we're using a 2%. And if you're presenting something different, we can see that in your brief. But again, from my understanding, there is a low vacancy. There may have been some amalgamations, name changes. But again, we're showing from the information sent in that the vacancy for the banks is low.
Have you studied sales of or leases of ex banks in the suburbs around Winnipeg, especially the older ones where they were closed? Has anyone in your office done a study on that?
I'm unaware of what exact studies have went down for the banks.
Okay. Sorry. Oh, and a last question on your rents on page 6. Have you read the leases for these, or does this just come from the income and expense forms?
No, I've just read what is sent in by the owners of the buildings, and we've gone from there for putting them in as their net leases.
So if you had a situation where the landlord put forth a very large tenant improvement and amortizing the rent, you would then not be aware of this?
Well, again, even if it is shown the tenant inducement, we don't include that as a deduction in net rent. So these are all reported net rents, even if there's tenant inducements included.
Sorry, do you know where that concept came from? I think you're mistaken.
Well, I'm just
That's-
saying, all I'm saying is for these rent comparables, we are putting in what the owner is putting as the net rent being sent in on our mailers. We're not making any adjustments for inducements or anything along those lines. We're just putting in what is being reported on the mailer as the net rent. That's what's being put down on for our comparables.
So if we have two banks side by side, and one rented the site and did their own improvements and paid $20, and the neighbor had the landlord do the work and amortize it in the rent and paid $30, you think that both are similar examples of a market-driven transaction of real estate only?
I'm just saying, however you want to interpret how to value those, I am reporting today what is being reported by the owners. I'm not adjusting them in any way. These are what are being sent in as the net rents, whether they're induced or not.
Okay, so
Either way.
that speaks
I'm
to
just
the
saying we're
level
making no changes.
of
This is what's being
background
sent
on
in.
this, just the mailer. Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Seelan, any questions?
Yes, have you inspected this location?
No, other than just being in there personally, I haven't done an inspection on any of the banks today.
What's your blended rent for this location?
You know what? Let me get my calculator and I can tell you.
Thanks.
I believe it's $15.11 a square foot.
If I asked you to choose one of your best comparables, what would you say the best comparables of these 12 would be with respect to this credit union slash bank?
So just to compare it to another credit union, it's built much more recently. It's the last comparable is the only credit union, if you're looking for the exact, but 1997, 6,000 square feet. It's at $23 a square foot. Again, ours is built 1980, so it's much older. But again, if you're looking at another credit union, that would be one comparison you could look at.
So you were discussing the cap, or at least the applicant was discussing the cap, and you have a table. So I apologize. Where does this fit in here? Is this like fit in under an office with the model?
Well,
or-
we don't have a classification for banks on here. Again, the range isn't being shown, so I don't know offhand what the 20th and 80th percentile for banks is. But again, this chart is more to compare the ones we do have with ones that are actually being compared by other companies, such as Colliers, CBRE, Cushman Wakefield. But again, there's no range to compare it to because there's nothing that I understand being released for banks. Because as Mr. Neufeld said, they don't sell very often. There's not a ton of information. So I would say there's just not a classification for it on this chart for comparison's sake.
So the model just generates the 7.1%.
Yeah, how the model is generating capitalization for banks for the cycle, and again, it's based on when it was built, where it's located, size, like are the main parameters for what's being created. How that exact 7.1% is made by the model. I mean, again, I really can't tell you because I don't know, but that is what's being model generated, 7.1%.
Thank you. That's all my questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a couple of questions. Mr. Spacek, do you know if there is a drive-through in this credit union?
Good question. I am not 100% sure. I do not believe there is a drive-through on this one. I believe this is walk-in only.
Okay. And what about your comparables that you've used? Do any of those have drive-throughs?
Yeah, so I could tell you now if you want to make a little note. I could tell you comparable 1 does not have a drive-through. I could tell you that comparable 2, 3, and 4 do have a drive-through. I can tell you that comparable 5, 6, and 7 do not have a drive-through. And I can tell you that comparables 8 through 12 all have drive-throughs.
All right. And do your comparables, to the best of your knowledge, do they have basement space?
That I didn't look up. I'm not sure. I don't think there's too many where we have the substandard basement space on them, and I'm not sure about the comparables.
Okay. So on your per square foot then, is that could be or not including basements then? Is that?
Yeah, it would be on a case by case if it did have basement space or not. You would see as they're being assessed from the brief, but for the comparables, it could or it could not. I just can't confirm because I don't know off the top of my head. I don't have that noted.
All right. I thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. I just have one and about the cap rate. So I understand that these are classified differently than anything that's on your chart. But if I look at the chart, the cap rate seems to be definitely on the high end of all of your ranges, correct?
Yeah, compared to the OFAs and suburban A and B, and then I'm
Yeah.
not familiar with the other areas that much, but
Okay.
even on retail and industrial, they're all 7.1's on the higher end for sure for our range of cap rates.
Would you have some sense of, maybe why the model would be providing a higher cap rate than most of your ranges here?
Yeah, I just think it's my best guess is that it's not consistently traded. There's not a ton of banks, being bought and sold. It's just if you're going to sell a bank, most often it's for a bank, but if it's an older building and it's being converted, it's just there's a lot of work to go into converting a bank into something else. So it's going to be in my eyes on the higher end of a cap rate. So again, that's probably why you're seeing a 7.1 versus a 5.4.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all I had. Okay, Mr. Neufeld, please proceed with your evidence.
I just had a redirect.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
The assessor, you chose your best comparable under questioning is 900 Harrow. That's a credit union, correct?
Yep.
Who holds the mortgage on it?
Again, I don't know who owns what mortgages on any of these buildings.
Well, did you not think it might be important to determine if we're dealing with arm's length situations, determine who's the mortgage holder and verified that?
Yeah, I think it's for sure, but I just don't know offhand who holds the mortgage for that property. I don't have that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, please proceed when you're ready.
Yes. Firstly, just a note on these. I didn't prepare these, and you know I have a habit of changing a lot of things when I look at them. There's a reason behind it, is that I'm an accredited appraiser, and I can't do work like this and present it without doing a full appraisal. So these tend to be more of an office job, and there's issues I really disagree with as an appraiser. But I'm going to give you a bit of a relief. I'm not going to change any numbers on it, because what they are is their positives and negatives changes. Firstly, this is a one-story building with a basement. The basement is obsolete. It is not part of rentable area. Under no circumstances would an appraiser, a real estate broker, an engineer, or a planner include basement space as rentable. Now, one could argue that it provides an amenity to the upper level, but it is never separately listed as rent, because this is a violation of standards. As such, we wouldn't have come up with such a high rent, but later on, I think the cap should be lower. So that's why I'm not going to make a change. The rest of the issues we use, the first being vacancy. On our page 3, this was just a very recent search of the latest merger, which was Access and I think Cambrian and a couple of others. Now I know this is post reference, but the fact is that we're still looking at the physical condition as of the tax year, and all of these buildings will go vacant. and that's a physical factor. But the amalgamation of credit unions has been going on for about 10 to 15 years, and it includes not only all the credit unions merging, but credit union central downsizing, and the whole operations changing. And the reasons have been, serving a market, the costs. It hasn't been financially feasible to maintain branches, as many branches as were being done. It has to do with what I mentioned earlier about when the assessor asked about a definition of what is a credit union. It's about having their own capital. They're really not allowed to go to secondary markets and borrowing and work on the spread. They're required to have assets on hand, and this allows them to have a pool their assets. And that's a business reason. And then it's just increased. It's probably the major one has been personal banking at home. It migrated from walking into the teller to the drive-through, and now I don't know anyone who still goes to the bank. I go maybe once every 2 months, rather than in the past you would almost go weekly to deposit checks and do your banking. Everything is done remotely, electronically, and that's they spend their resources having an electronic reach, not a physical reach anymore. And that's just a sign of obsolescence in the industry. The other obsolescence factors that they do deal with, the assessor brought up the concept of a vault. Well, when I started banking, there was a vault in the back, and there was a big steel door on it, and there's a safe deposit box. And banks used to brag about the size of their vault doors. You know what they call those things today? Restaurant conversions with character, because it's not something that's needed. The cash dispensing machine in most banking institutions is bolted to the floor, and you've all seen it behind the tellers. They punch a couple of buttons and out spits the money. Everything has gone to this style of system. So all this concept about vaults is obsolescence, and you can't remove them because they're engineered to hold the roof up. I have seen a very interesting alternate use of a vault, and that was a conversion to a chiropractic clinic and using it as an X-ray room, which made sense because it has dense walls to absorb the X-rays. But the other buildings I speak of, half the office buildings, or most all office buildings built before the 70s, have vault rooms, which are all obsolete. There's no need to store records in that manner, and everything's gone electronic. So it is obsolete space. I put forward the concept that bank buildings are loaded with functional obsolescence, and we're not charged with finding the rent of what the Royal Bank can afford to pay. What we were out to do is find out what the site would rent for on the market to an open group of potential renters, not a bank. That's called business value. And I won't repeat this on the rest that we're dealing with, but it just outlines the change in the nature of banking. Banking it's more common to see a location in a strip mall. So there'll be a tanning salon on one side and a dentist office on the other and a bank in the middle. And what's the difference? None. So that's our position is, and I probably am representing a dozen operations that were banks that are now just general retail. They're not great sites. They're nice, sturdy buildings, but they're loaded with floor obsolescence. So that is our position on that nature. Now, in terms of vacancy, we looked at the suburban, we looked at office vacancies because most of them have an office feel to them, but it could be retail as well. I think that the conversions we've seen have been either there's a couple I've seen converted to financial planners, and so I've seen we're representing one converted to a pizza restaurant, and that sort of thing. So it is a mix of different alternate uses, but They do have a heavy vacancy problem. And the reason that this isn't picked up is because nobody really tracks the bank vacancy market. But this turnover is significant. The rate we use is on page 5 and 6 is the Johnson office report. And you see that on page 5, the total inventory of office is 11.4% vacant, and suburban is 9.3. We use an average of those two just to make sure we have a large enough sample size, and so we wouldn't use the 11.4, but skew it downwards for the suburban flavor of that, and that's how we get to our rate of 10.3. You can see below that the average at the bottom of that page shows how we arrived at that rate. And the concept of shortfall, we used a number which I believe was derived from the statements that the owner has sent in, and I can't find them in my report, but I know the assessor's got them on his page 11, and that is in 2022 they spent $122,000 in maintaining their site, and that is how you calculate a shortfall, is what are the costs. So it's significantly higher, and sorry, I didn't even compare it to the model generated. Maybe I'm opening my mouth for nothing. Well, no, it is higher than what the model has generated. See, that's the problem with this model, because it puts in bank rates at higher rent, and yet it has a lower shortfall rate. The two should match, because you're talking about the real estate that you can't cherry pick and have one low amount and one higher amount. This also goes to speak to the non-recoverable expenses on their workup. The non-recoverable expenses would be relating to they don't have a specific category for it because they're owner occupied. Everything is non-recoverable. There are some later examples later of the non-recoverables that banks incur. And in terms of the capitalization rate, I do agree that our rate is too high, and because there's really three factors that must balance: the rent, the vacancy, and the capitalization rate. And you can't pick a low cap rate if you have room for revenue growth, and vice versa. However, I believe this rent is completely overstated, and especially by the basement amount. The cap, we should have adjusted the income downwards by about $18,000, and the capitalization rate should be about 8%. And informally, I just did the math, and it's very similar. I can make the change or leave it as is. I don't think there's going to be much difference. I would note that the 2023 assessment is still under appeal at case management, and the issues I'm bringing forward are the same issues we're bringing forward on case management. There is a misunderstanding in many circles on bank real estate. It's not special. It's not different. When you hear people informally talk, they always say, well, banks have lots of money, they can afford to pay. That's not how value is decided. It's decided on what the building can earn. Got nothing to do with the tenant. And I think that we see a model that's skewed in that direction. Lastly, on page 4, we have a number of rents, and the difficulty here, when I was asking the assessor questions, was to find rents that are not impacted by tenant improvements, because what he was trying to say I'm putting words in his mouth, is that when tenant improvements are included in the subject property as a form of income, the city assessor ignores them and treats them as income. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about two banks side by side. One got the landlord to finance their tenant improvements, one didn't, and the rents differ by $10 a square foot. To speak very informally, if one tenant gets bribed to rent the site, no one should be using that as a comparable on their own site. That's a non-market transaction. That's called a financial incentive to rent a site, which isn't covered by market value. So our problem was always to find rents that were free and clear of these inducements, and these are the ones we have. And I think that the $22 a foot at the high end of the scale for main floor area is very, very well supported by this, and we would request the value as stated. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spacek, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter, any questions?
Sorry, Madam Chair, it just takes me a minute to unmute myself.
No, that's okay. No worries.
Actually, I have no questions for Mr. Neufeld, but could I just redirect to the assessor?
Sure. Yeah.
I just wanted clarification on a point. Mr. Spacek, I believe you, Mr. Seelan had asked if you had inspected this property and you said no, correct?
Correct. Yes.
So do you have anything in your notes as to when it was inspected and or to the condition of the property? Because it is a 1980 build.
Yeah, from my understanding, I don't have a note in front of me of when it was last inspected, but from 1980, there's been no major permits taken out. No, it is, from my understanding, an older credit union with more, there's been no major renovations from my understanding.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, did you state earlier that you thought your cap rate was high?
I was just saying it's on the higher end of
Yeah.
of the range from my understanding, but when you compare it, I was just asked when you compare it to any of the ranges that are being shown, it's on the high end of all of them. So that's all I was answering.
All right, I thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan, any questions?
Yes, for the applicant, Mr. Neufeld, on the non-recoverables, is that a percentage of your markup here? Doesn't have anything in your chart on page.
Yes, that's correct. It's 5%.
5%?
Yes.
When it comes to banks and credit unions, you mentioned that the vault holds up the ceiling or roof, I should say, roof. Do you have any cost of what it would cost to remove a vault from a building?
I'm just thinking of all the ones I've been in, with the exception of one, it formed part of the frame, so it couldn't be removed. And the walls are generally steel reinforced concrete, so you can't put a window in a wall where it is load bearing, because they're not usually they're not posted, right? Like there aren't posts at every corner. It's the entire vault forms a support structure. So without, they don't, if you had a beam in a corner, you could cut the wall in between and remove it, but they generally don't. And the only one I've ever been in that where it could be removed is they actually had it added on as a separate part of the building, so it could have been removed. And that was in Selkirk. So I don't think it's ever been economical to remove one. Even, I'm just trying to think, I was in a building that was a bank built in 1911 with that at a triple level vault. And in that case, again, it was part of the structure. They just don't remove them. Can't. It's a major structural issue.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, just on your rental rates, have you used the same one rate, the same rental chart in all of your presentations today?
I think so. I haven't looked
Okay, I just wondered, do you have an average of those?
I can calculate that.
Well, it's okay. I thought maybe it was here and I was missing it, so I just wanted to.
It's not allowed in the appraisal business to rely on averages. They say, why would you have an average? Why would you have to hire an appraiser if you just did averages? It's an inside profession joke. It's $21.84.
Thank you. And that's all the questions I had. So any summation, Mr. Spacek?
No need for summation, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Neufeld?
I had something, but I've forgotten it. I'm sure I'll pick it up later.
Okay,
We'll
we'll give you an opportunity with the next one as well.
It's the same general issue.
Okay, so the next item on the docket today is 1366 Henderson Highway. So Mr. Spacek, if you would like to read that into the roll, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are looking at file number 24-3846. This is roll number 040009082000. We're now just down the highway a little bit to the north. We're at 1366 Henderson Highway. We're still on the west side of the highway with a 2025 value for this credit union at $2,871,000. This is a 2007 built bank. So again, we have a more recent bank. It's a gross floor area of 6,100 square feet across one floor with a leasable area of 6,100 feet as well. You will see from the aerial pictures on page 2 how this bank looks. It's directly across the highway from Springfield, and it is again just south of Chief Peguis Highway. For the Chief Peguis Bridge. We have aerial views and then more of a global view on page 3 showing exactly where it is. I'm using the same comparable chart on page 5. You can see those same comparables right there. If we turn to page 6, you'll be able to see that we again have the same income setup for this property. So we have 6,100 square feet at $32.10. Again, all model driven, 2% vacancy, 3% expenses, $8 shortfall, and a 6.45% cap rate. And if we scroll down to page 10, I've just included the mailer that was sent in by the owner. And again, on the only thing to really know, we have page 11. We have a credit union lease started 2006. So again, when it was built, we have a lease going until 2037. The base rent is currently at approximately $35 a square foot. That are reported 6,000 square feet on this one. And again, if you have any questions, that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Any questions?
This property, just confirm, is what's the name of the credit union? The Cambrian. So that's now part of the Access Group, correct?
Yeah, if that's the amalgamation, yeah, correct.
And this has an upper floor area?
We just have it as one floor.
Okay. And this is leased?
From my understanding on page 11, yeah, from my understanding, the Cambrian Credit Union started the lease in 2006 when it was built, and then there's a lease going until 2037.
Okay, and on that page 11, they actually declare their tenant inducements in this, correct?
And yeah, leasing commissions, they are showing on the mailer.
But the issue is that there were inducements to enter into this long-term contract at the rate indicated, correct?
They are showing inducements, correct.
Okay. And I think if I ask you this question, I'm expecting you to say this is outside your scope, but are you aware whether or not this particular credit union will survive the mergers?
It was built 2007. When I run by it, it's still open. I'm not sure what the future holds for it.
Okay. Um, I have no other new questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Seelan, any questions?
Yeah, just to confirm, does this bank have a drive-through?
This one does have a drive-through, yes.
That's all my questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter?
My question was asked and answered. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't think I have any questions. So Mr. Neufeld, please proceed when you're ready.
Thanks. This actually property has been used many times in the past when it was rented by to Cambrian from the user, and so this new lease, we don't view this as being a market transaction because they've actually taken the trouble to declare that there were inducements into it. The whole concept of inducements is not part of, in this case, I remember I was drawing a line. If you use it as a comparable, you shouldn't. If it relates to the actual building, then it becomes what people consider to be a gray area. With the change in general accounting procedures to IFRS, these sorts of leases are supposed to be broken down into income based on rental revenue and on financial returns, such as repayment of the inducement, because it's now considered to be fraud if you don't declare it. At least if you're publicly traded, you get kicked off the stock exchange. So one of the things that's changed in our appraisal profession is to make sure we're very, very clear on it. And if we do include the inducements, we have to declare that it does include partial inducements. The issue on this particular property, well, that's one of the reasons we didn't use it. And the other reason is that there are 5 other access credit unions in close proximity. Our office is doing a very large part of the work on their expected closures. I'm not allowed, obviously, to tell you which ones we're going to get closed and which ones they're trying to dispose of, which are 2 different factors. But the problem is that this community is well served, and any investor looking at this in terms of a revenue stream being guaranteed by Access Credit Union would be troubled by this, and that's one of the reason on this one. I think in the earlier one, we were a little bit more confident that one was going to stay because it's on right on Henderson at 1200. So we have 1200 Henderson Access Credit Union, 1366 Henderson Access Credit Union. It's fair to say one of them is going. And as a result, it's not going to be sometime during this next assessment cycle. It's probably not going to be have a puck code as a bank. It'll be something different. But in the marketplace, our world, that means uncertainty. So our workup was done at the higher end of our bank range of clean rents, which is on page 4. And then with this one was done with a lower cap rate. And then in terms, I had mentioned earlier about the shortfall, this one has a statement that you can actually see the non-recoverables, and on the assessor's page, page 10, the shortfalls, the non-recoverables are about $10,000, not including mortgage interest, obviously. So $10,000 a year on a non-recoverable. We have that calculated at net 6703. So it's short of the actual. Again, proof that non-recoverables exist and are not being adequately addressed in the model. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Spacek, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you, Madam.
Okay. Ms. Linklater, any questions? Yeah, you're still muted there. You're still muted. Are you okay? No questions? Okay. Okay, Mr. Steelan, any questions?
No questions, Madam Chair.
You.
Yeah.
And I do not have any questions. So, Mr. Spacek, do you have any need for summation on this property?
No summation, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Neufeld.
I have to be very careful what I say. I'm only going to tell you the facts of this. If you look up Access Credit Union for their locations, this one's no longer on the map. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda, 515 St. Anne's Road. So just give everybody a minute to pull this up.
Okay, and for this one, I believe Prob is going to present. And
Okay.
also, could I request a 5-minute break just to use the washroom before we start this?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
I was going to do it after this property, but that's fine. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, we'll take 10. We'll come back at 10 after 10. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning again, everybody. And I'd like to call the meeting back to order. So we will proceed to item number 3 on the docket, which is 515 St. Anne's Road. So, Mr. Spacek.
Thank you. I'm going to pass this one over to Prob, and she is going to present it. So,
okay,
at your earliest convenience, Prob. Thank you.
Yes,
okay,
I'm
please go ahead and I'm just going to confirm there are no preliminary issues with this property.
No.
No. Okay, thank you. Please go ahead and read it onto the roll and present your evidence. Thank you.
So I'm presenting today the file number 244113, and the roll number is 0802096830. Address is 515 St. Anne's Road. It is owner occupied bank, and the owner's name is Access Credit Union Limited. So we are here today maintaining the value of 2025 assessed value of 1,509,000 as of the reference date, April 1st, 2023. So this bank is a one-story building. Actually, year build was 2005, and as of now, there is no major renovation happened. So effective year built is also the same, 2005. So gross floor area is 6,000 square feet, and the leasable area is 5,700 square feet. On the page number 2, we can see the pictures of the bank is located on the St. Anne's Road at the corner of St. Anne's and Bellevue Road East. And the further to the page number 4, we can see the bank aerial view, and we can see the bank has a 2 entrance, one from the St. Anne's Road and the other is from the Bellevue Road East. And the bank is located in the southeast side of the Winnipeg. And the page number 6, I have the same 12 comparable which Jonathan represented, but I can just briefly discuss what my comparables are. So the first comparable is 1219 Grant Avenue, and it is built in 1961, and the lease start in 2021 for the 3 year with the 6,713 square feet with the $30 net rent per square feet. As the comparable second address is 2785 Pembina Highway, and the build is in 2007 for the 5-year lease, started in 2022, and the gross Gross square footage is 6,351 square feet, and the net rent per square feet is $33. And the comparable number 3 is located at 270 St. Anne's Road, and it is built in 2004, and the lease is for the 5 years started in 2019, and the square footage of the bank is 5,800 with the net rent per square feet is $36.70. And the comparable number 4 is located at 2799 Pamina Highway, and it is built in 1996, and for the lease for the 3 years started in 2023, and the gross square footage is 4,500 square feet with the $31 net rent per square feet. And the comparable number 5 is 1300 Pamina Highway. It's built in 1952 with the 5-year lease, and the net rent per square foot is 1983, and the gross square footage is 12,195. And the comparable number 6 is located at 1300 Pamina Highway, and it is built in 1952 with the lease of 5 years, and a gross area square footage is 12,195, and the net rent is 1983. And the comparable number 6 is 230 Portage Avenue, and it is built in 1985, and lease is for 3 years started in 2020, and the gross area per square foot is 9,765, and the net rent is $18. And the comparable number 7 is 235 Marion Street. It is built in 1960, and the lease is for the 5 year, started in 2021, and the gross area is 2,241, and the net rent is $18.74. So comparable number 8 is located at 2,260 McPhillip Street, and it is built in 1998, and the lease is for the 5 years, started in 2023, and the area is 6,138, and the rent is $40.76. So moving to the comparable number 9, it is located at 1100 Taylor Avenue. It is built in 2018, lease is for the 10-year. Its lease start date is 2017, and the square footage is 5,100. And the net rent per square foot is $47. So now we are moving to the comparable number 10. It is located at 3247 Portage Avenue, and the year built is 2000, and the lease is for the 5 year, started in 2021, and the area is 5,385, and the net rent is $29. And the comparable number 11, it is located at 2840 Pamina Highway. It is built in 2017, and the lease term is for the 5 years, started in 2022, and the area is 4,927, and the net rent is $42. And the last comparable is located at 900 Harrow Street East, and it built in 1997, leases for a year, which started in 2021, and the area is 6,164 square feet, and the net rent per square foot was $23. So by calculating, the average rent is $30.76, and the median rent is $30.50, which range from $18 to the low end and $47 to the high end. And the page number 7, it's described our leasable area for the bank is 3,000, with the rent per square foot is $30.60. For the basement area is 2,700, and the rent is 3.98, which calculate the total potential rent is $102,546, with the 2% vacancy loss applied and the 3% expense applied, with the shortfall of $8 per square foot, and the cap rate is 6.40%, and model derived the rent total market value to $1,509,000. So on the page number 8, there is a further breakdown of income value summary. And moving to the page number 11, there is an income and expense mailer we received from the property owner. It is fully owner occupied as per the income and expense mailer, and we can see the leasable area for the main floor is 3,300 square feet and the basement is 1,950 square feet has been reported by the owner. Thank you, and my presentation is complete.
Thank you very much. Mr. Neufeld, any questions?
Yes, I do. First, a general question, and I should have asked this earlier, and maybe this is more a Jonathan question. This property has the 2020 and 2023 appeals sitting at the municipal board. When this happens, have you been given directions on this property of any sort by your supervisors?
No, are you asking because of those municipal board appeals that are in place?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of assessors say that they're not allowed to make any recommendations or do any changes when there's outstanding municipal boards happening.
I mean, I've never been told that, but I believe if I was to look at this one, I mean, this is probably out of the scope of this hearing, but it would be to look at the other years as well.
Yeah, I agree
You know
that
what I
this is out of the scope of what we're discussing today.
No, it is within the scope if they've been given directions.
Well, he said no, so.
Right, and that's, I just wanted to clarify that point. Other assessors have said they've been given directions. Okay. When was the last time? Do you know the last time that an assessor was in the building to look at it?
I don't have that information, no.
Oh, am I back to you? Okay, fine. Did either of you?
I'll let you answer the rest of the questions unless just let me know.
Did either of you review the file and the notes on the file in regard to the deficiencies in the building?
So as per we noted, there is no deficiencies as per in my record and in my appeal notes.
There's none in your notes. That's fine. And this particular property has a rent that's set higher than the other ones we looked at. Is that why would that happen?
Because as compared to the other property we seen it today, this property is built in 2005, which is newer than the other two properties we presented in the morning.
And this also has a lower capitalization rate than we've seen earlier. Why is this?
According to me, because this property is located in a high demand area, which is southeast side of the city, and it is located on a Santan Road, which is the high demanded area. So that is the reason it has a low cap rate.
So you just answered with answers describing physical conditions.
Physical condition, location, as well as the demand of the area of that bank.
What does that matter in terms of earning potential?
Because it is located in the Santan Road, which is busy road, and it has also the malls nearby that, like St. Vital Mall, and universities are near around that area. So that is my understanding of the low cap rate compared to the other.
Does your model not have some sort of factor dealing with major theory in valuation, which is if you're already earning more rent, there's nowhere else to go, so you shouldn't cap it high? Does that in theory been plugged into the model? So
according to me, I don't have the answer of that because I am talking about the facts is presented today, and I don't know how exactly the model works.
On page 11, did anyone look into, do you ever look into, not you or the assessor, anyone look into the costs and try to compare them from property to property? Like, have you done it for these properties today? So say utilities would be one area.
So According to me, we only worked on the income and expense mailer. They provided us the information, and they reported that the main floor area is 3,300 square feet, but we have the lesser than that. And they have the basement floor area is 1950 reported, and we have a little bit higher area of the basement, but that is a substandard basement, and the bank usually use the substandard basement as a storage in our system. So that's why the substandard basement has a lower rent.
That wasn't the question. I'll clarify that. This building gross area you have listed as 5,200 square feet. Your utilities are almost $19,000 and built in 2005. Earlier today, you introduced evidence on a much older building, 8,000 square feet with virtually the same utility cost. At any point, does the assessment department look at factors such as the cost of common area costs as being an impact on their earning ability?
On that, I don't know the answer.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan, any questions?
Yes, what's the blended rate of rent for this property?
Okay, I can calculate it. Give me a few seconds.
Thanks.
So the blended rate for this property is 17.99.
Okay. Does this bank have a drive-through?
As from the picture, I don't think this bank has a drive-through.
No.
No, according to my guess is no, but I have not explored more in details.
Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you. Thank you very much. Ms. Linkletter, do you have any questions?
Yes, just a couple. Good morning, Prob.
Good morning.
Just in regards, sort of what Mr. Neufeld was asking, to the best of your knowledge, when this building was built in, I believe, 2005,
Yes.
was it built specifically as the credit union as it is now?
For that question, I don't know what was there before 2005. And according to me, we are only looking for after the 2005. This is a bank, but I have not explored anything what was there before 2005.
Okay. And in regards to your rent comparables on page 6 of your brief,
Yes.
which would you consider your best comparable for this property?
I would consider the comparable number 2, which is 2785 Pamina Highway. It is 2-year, newer to the subject property, but if we are looking at the rent is $33 net per square feet, and our is $30.60.
Okay. And to the best of your knowledge, does that comparable have a drive-through and a basement?
I have not looked into that, but according to me,
Excuse me, I apologize. I think Mr. Spacek already had given me
Yes.
the information about the
Yes.
drive-throughs, but do you know if it has a basement?
I don't have any idea about that.
All right, I thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. And I have no questions that haven't already been answered. So Mr. Neufeld, please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. So the building was built, as you note, in 2005, and I was actually involved in some way. I've been working for, at this time it was Crosstown since 2003. That's really the longest I've ever held a job in my life. But we were very familiar with the layout of the bank and how it started. So the history of this bank, it was purpose built as a credit union. There is a drive-through in it. It's at the rear. It's not a great design. Just looking at the Google Street View, people get out of their cars to go up to the tellers, the machines, but it does have a drive-through. The problem with this bank from day one has been thermal efficiency. And the picture, and I think page 2 is the best picture of the situation, is they have a raised ceiling area and a fair amount of windows, and the building doesn't work thermally. So what has happened over the years is there have been lots of band-aids to it. They've increased the size of the HVAC systems. They've added baseboard heating. And in 2000 and I think the date was around 14, all the glass was replaced with thermal glass. Essentially, it's a pig to heat, and it's a design issue on it. And that's why I was asking the question on it. Now, why does this matter? Is because in the marketplace, the rule of thumb is that landlords focus on net rents and tenants focus on gross rents. So if your building is too expensive to heat, that comes off the rent that a tenant is willing to pay. They want to walk in and say, I want to spend $25, $30 a foot, whatever it is. I don't care if you want a net rent of $20, but then guarantee my CAM recoveries are only going to be 10. And that's how a negotiation goes. Too often in assessment hearings and appraisers even, it's the over focus on the net, just the assumption that, oh, people will pay those expenses. Well, they don't. It grinds it down. And the more the issue has always been to look at the picture as a whole and determine if there's room to earn at that level. Now, as I said earlier, the building is at the municipal board for the 2020 and the 23 years. Just for information only, one is a city appeal at $852,000, and one is our appeal at $1,292,000. So I don't believe, in my opinion, that the assessor is really interested in talking about this, except as a global solution. And we get a situation a lot at boards where, how come you haven't talked and tried to resolve it? Most of these properties of access credit unions have multiple years under appeal in previous years. And the main point, and this is pertinent, the main point is these are not banks, these are credit unions. It's a different type of building and a different type of real estate, period. The rents used here are, again, I'm disagreeing with the basement rent whatsoever. It shouldn't be placed in, and the cap rate is much too aggressive. I don't think 8.75 is deserved. It's probably closer to about 8%. And just so you know, I'm just doing the math here just to verify what I said. Essentially, the difference on value, if I drop one and raise the other, is $14,000, $15,000 difference, with a dropping of the basement, increase the main floor to 24, drop the cap rate to 8%. That's what I would have done with it. I didn't do this, but I want to be comfortable that we're presenting you with something reasonable. The rents we looked at, and that would have been a blended rate, all applied to the main floor, would be commensurate with what we're seeing here on page 4. And we do have several on St. Mary's. One is a TD Bank in a mall at 27, and the other is it's a financial institution, but it's not a major bank, in a strip mall at $21. That really confirms what that the rent should be somewhere in that area. The one at the Charter Bank at 1631 St. Mary's has influence of the shopping center of San Patel Center, and it does have a drive-through. So, as I said, my analysis on this, that the rent would be actually 20. Yeah, I'm trying to get the perfect number. 25 on the main, nothing for the basement. That's my opinion. 8% cap rate, and that coincides what we presented. But again, I hope I'm not being too confusing. I don't. There's no point.
Let's just confirm, Mr. Neufeld, you're not actually going to change your workup. You're just explaining. Yeah.
I
Okay.
told you I had a late night. I'm having
Yeah, no,
difficulty putting my thoughts
I just want
together.
to confirm that you're just, yeah, and understood that you're saying that even if you change the numbers, the difference is not that huge. So.
Yeah, yeah. And one other point to consider is we had brought up the topic of credit union closures, and on Access's map, there are three, one you're going to hear later today, within about half a kilometer of each other.
Is this post-reference information though?
It's physical information.
Well, I'm a little uncomfortable with discussing
okay, and
that.
that's fair, but it colors our minds, and you're free to disregard it. But the process of mergers and amalgamations is not post-reference. Our company was hired in 2022 to begin the analysis, so we knew it was happening a long time before this. The rest of the world didn't, because they chose not to share that. But within the real estate world, we knew it was happening, and that's why I think it's pertinent. It's not a question of whether or not it existed; it's whether or not the rest of the world could hear it. And market participants did, and the buyers and sellers did. But the site has an incredible problem with the quality of the building, and there've been more issues than that. And I have personally brought assessors to it 3 times, and at different stages between 2005 and I think the last time we went in there, actually, Ayrton brought someone in 2022, I believe. So I've had 3, and I think he's brought once, and we've showed them the issues, and I guess the city doesn't track this information in the files, but it is in the files, and that is the substance of our concern for this particular site, is the quality of the building. Just because it was built in 2005 doesn't mean it was built well. It was not built well, and nothing new other than that to add that you haven't already heard today. Yeah, and no, I had one comment for whatever summation.
Okay, great, thank you. Do either of the assessors have any questions?
I have no questions personally, thank you.
I have no question.
No questions, thank you. Ms. Linkletter, any questions for Mr. Neufeld?
Just one quick question. Mr. Neufeld, you are referencing the design of this building and the issues that it has caused, but have those issues been resolved?
They've been mitigated and lessened. Every time a change is made, it has improved it. But for example, one of the mitigating factors to produce enough heat and cooling is to bring in greater capacity, therefore higher energy consumption. So it solves the creature comfort issue, but it costs money that detracts from its earning ability. That's what I was trying to get at. They've been, I would say 50-60%. No, they've been about 80% corrected at a cost.
All right, I thank you.
Mr. Sealing, any questions?
No questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, and I have no questions. Any summation by the assessors?
No, I will just emphasize that our assessed value is 1,509,000 is fair.
Thank you. And Mr. Neufeld, I believe you said you had a summation point to make?
Yeah, and it was just in regard to what I was asking the assessor about, and this is theory. It's called anticipation, and when we do capitalization rates in our business, whether it's as an appraiser or a broker, you know, the discussion doesn't center around location issues. It centers around 2 issues. One is, can I make more rent? 2, can I lower my expenses? It's money. And it's a concept of anticipation. If you're buying a place that has no upside, say your rent is already at the top of the market, you're going to have to cap higher. because you're not going to get a bump. If you have a low performing site with a tremendous upside, you cap lower because the concept of anticipation, you'll make more money down the road. And what this relates to is the assessment model is physical issue based only, and it ignores not just the major, but the absolute concept in the market. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the docket, which is number 4, 1033 St. Mary's Road. And I'll just give everybody a minute to pull that up. Okay, and Mr. Assessor or Madam Assessor, please proceed whenever you're ready.
Yes, our next property's file number is 244100. The roll number is 0802 108 0400. It is located at 1033 St. Mary's Road, and we are maintaining the 2025 assessed value of 2,023,000 as of the reference date of April 1st, 2023. So this bank is constructed in 1996, and so far our effective year built is also 1996. And it is a one-story bank with the gross floor area 8,985 square feet, with the leasable area is 6,333 square feet. The page number 2, we can see the bank's picture, and it is located on the St. Mary's Road and the intersection of Hinderley Avenue. And the bank is located in the southeast side of the Winnipeg. And moving to the page number 6, we have the same comparable we presented in the morning for the other properties. So I will just briefly say that our average rent is $30.76, with the median rent is $30.50. The low end rent is $18 and the high end is $47. So this property has the 2 rent comparables. The reason why, because it has the A1 high quality finish area as well, which is considered in the OFS building. We have the 5 comparables, which has the lease start date from 2019 up to 2022 for the term of 5 years up to 12 years. And the net rent is ranging from $19 to $25. So on the page number 7, we can see that the substandard basement has a leasable area of 1,121 square feet, with the net rent per square feet is 5.57. With the bank credit union, the leasable area is 2,562, with the net rent is $29.93 per square feet. With the A1 high quality finish area is 2,650 square feet, and the rent is 22.51. With the vacancy loss is 2% and the expense is 3%, with the shortfall of $8 per square feet, and the cap rate is 6.65%. Model drive the market value to 2,023,000. So we are moving to the page number 8. It has a further breakdown of our income stream. And then the page number 11, it states that the income and expense mailer, this property is fully owner occupied, and they reported the leasable area of 5,212 square feet. And that is my presentation end. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, any questions?
Yes, I'm just looking at your areas here on page 1. You indicate a plan area of 5,986 and a basement of 2,999. On your workup on page 7, the upper area is totaled at 5,212 and the basement 1,121. What are the reasons for the changes?
So you mean to say that why the total area is not matching with income and expense mailer?
No, I just asked why you said that this is all owner occupied.
Mm-hmm.
Why was this done differently?
Because the substandard basement usually we consider as a storage area, so their rent is lower than compared to the bank space. And the bank and the high quality finish area has a difference of the rent because of could be the reason it has offices as well as the tailors. They divide the area differently according to the classification of the property.
Sorry, you answered in terms of rent value. I asked the question in terms of leasable area versus gross area.
So the leasable area is 6,333 square feet. And the gross area is 8,985 square feet.
Right, and
Yeah.
that's what I was asking and wondering what was the method by which it was changed from gross to leasable.
For that, I don't have any idea. For the next time, I will explore more to answer this question.
Okay, and why is it split into two rentable areas on the upper floor? You did say it was owner occupied, correct?
Yes, it is owner occupied. Why there is a two spaces? According to me, it has offices as well as the customer service. So their according to me, their floor finished area is different. Because as you know, the bank's area like a finished area is supposed to be superior. So it could be the reason why they have a separate rent and the separate classification in the building.
You're guessing here, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm not guessing. That's according to my best theory we applying at the everyday life.
I put it to you that you're guessing because that's not the right answer. But anyway.
And I'll just, from my history on this one and putting it together, is there's a couple of these that you'll see on the top of page 3, right? There is Brio Insurance. So it used to be reported separately, Brio Insurance as a, I'm guessing it was a book rent, but from my understanding, it was when this was first done, there was, quote unquote separate entities, and is, from my memory on this property, is that how it was, Rocky?
Yeah, no,
And now it's being reported as one because Brio Insurance is, I'm not sure if they're still there, but again, that's why there are separate spaces. And I think if this one was to be relooked at and updated, all of the gross floor area would be as the leasable square footage as its owner occupied. But again, that's my guess.
right, and you're close. But so when on that basis, though, that's where I was going to. Wouldn't your model have generated a lower rental rate had it been reported accurately?
If it was updated to just 1 square footage as just bank, I believe the rent would actually all be higher because it would all be under bank. So it'd be at $29 a square foot for the whole place. Because we have it split up, the OFS portion at high quality is at 22. But I think overall it would actually be higher. But again, I'd have to actually run the changes to confirm.
Well, were there any building permits taken out to upgrade the insurance space to what you call bank quality?
I don't have the history. I don't know if any updates have been done past it being insurance office.
And is it still an insurance office use inside that space?
Yeah, from my understanding, yeah, I don't have any record showing major changes to the building.
Are you suggesting that your model would follow the ownership instead of the usage?
No, I was just trying to answer your question of would it be what would change value wise, and again, if this was all a bank, which again I'm not sure what it is right now. Is it half insurance? What would it be? I'm just trying to answer your question of if it became all of a bank, what would that work out? Because if not, we have to have it split up, how it is.
Yeah, no, and I can't. I'm not testifying now, but I guess my question is, let's just put it. This isn't even hypothetical. If the usage has not changed, but there is unity of ownership, would not the overall rate be reflected lower?
If we had this, so I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. How would you have this split up if it was
Your model's based on sizing, though, right?
part of it? Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I'll just leave it at that, and point out that there's an issue that hasn't been resolved. The history of this building, there's a sale listed on page 5. Do you know anything of the details of the transaction?
In 2014, the sale for 1,950,000. No.
Okay. Well, what was it? Was it a credit union before that date?
I have just the sale price in front of me on this brief. I don't have any information on the sale. You could present that on yours.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. I just, if you had it, it makes life easier. I have no other new questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Seelan, any questions?
Yes, can you tell me what the blended rent is for this location, please?
I can calculate. Give me a few seconds. So my calculator is not working. I'll use a computer one. Give me a few seconds. And it is $22.51.
$22 and
51.
51.
Yep.
You, I'm just looking at the pictures here. Does this have a drive-through?
As per my Google search, it does not have any drive-through.
Thanks. That's all my questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter, any questions?
Yes, I just have a couple here. So, do you have anything in your notes as to when the last inspection occurred?
No, usually we have the system where we can check, but it's not right handy right now for me.
Okay,
But yeah,
okay,
I
so,
don't have a record.
okay, thank you. So that just leads into the high finish that you've got on your brief.
Yes.
Can you,
Why it is high finish, you mean?
yeah, can you speak to that? I understand you haven't inspected it yourself and you have no notes, but
Okay, so usually we consider the high quality finish area if it is a superior floor finish and the concrete wall or the layout of the bank. Then we also might have the permit links to that, like property, and somebody inspected, and that's the reason it considered as a high quality finish area.
all right.
But I don't have anything available right now to represent.
Okay. So you don't know if this was possibly a reno that took place after the sale in 2014?
I don't have any data available right now for that to speak.
Okay. And I'm just looking at the square footage cost on the basement, which is, I believe, 557.
Yes.
Do you have any reason to have it that high?
It's a model-driven rent, so I don't have any reason why it is compared to the other briefs is high.
Okay, so it's model.
Yeah, it's model generated rent.
All right. I thank you. That's all my
Thank you.
questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'm not sure that you'll know this answer if you haven't inspected the property, but the high quality finished space, does that have a separate entrance to the lower quality finished space? Do you know?
It's usually not not a case if a high quality finished area is supposed to have a separate space. It's all depend upon their physical outlay and the material it is used. So basically that's we consider as a high quality finish,
Okay.
even though if it does not have a separate entrance.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That was all of my questions. So Mr. Neufeld, let's hear your presentation, please.
Okay. This one's got a lot of strange issues. So first I will explain the discrepancy in the area. And if you look at the picture on page 2, the gross floor area was determined using the open area overhang. And this is a mistake that it was made because whoever decided to put the area down was reading a plan and the roof line. So it is not interior rentable space. That's the first answer to the size discrepancy. And so the number of 5212 for a first floor plan area is correct. This assessor is using the right area. They just apparently didn't know why they were using it. And I'm not trying to be an ass here. It's just long history with these buildings. The second issue is the difference in the space. So this building was originally built as an Assiniboine credit union and sold to Sonova credit union to credit union. So it's not a sale that is going to be relied on because it was for the obtaining the site of a building that already had all the tenant improvements in place to operate as a credit union. And these tenant improvements are not taxable. So they were not buying, so it was not all for the realty portion of the site. It's when you get a sale like that, there's no real way of adjusting it unless you go through and spend several $100,000 on experts' opinions. Now, when Sonova bought it, Brio, the insurance company was actually, I don't think it was Brio, it was their predecessor, was renting space, and they weren't part of each other. In the merger happened with Sonova joining Access Credit Union in 2023. So at that point, now Brio is now a fully owned subsidiary of Access Credit Union. In 2023, the business relationship changed. Until then, they were an arm's length tenant. Now they had a contractual relationship, but a contractual relationship is just like having a tenant. That doesn't mean that you're doing favors for each other. You're still looking after yourself. And that was the difference there. So today, it is all owned by Access Credit Union. One of their divisions, Brio, occupies the same space. There was no physical change in its quality whatsoever. And again, this is where I begin to take tremendous exception with the concept of bank finish. Anyone just walk in there and tell me what's the difference between the insurance space and the credit union space? There is none. So the assessor says, well, one's worth 22, the other's worth 29. That's not appropriate. It's just space. It's the same on both sides. If you change who's the tenant, you're chasing the value of the business, not the value of the real estate. And that's why now our workup, again, this is, okay, I should probably give you the math details in a little bit better. We have had tremendous issues trying to deal with the basement space. It's not rentable. And we actually have a very recent decision on 1963 Henderson, which said, yes, of course, if it's not legally permissible to rent it, it is not rentable. They said you could consider it as accessory to the upper level, and if it actually provided an amenity, it would result in a higher upper level rental. Now, we continually have this argument that the city says, oh, basements count. These things are empty. They were built for paper storage. There's no paper storage anymore. And so my colleague thought to get clever. Now, if you look at the number 119059 and divide it by 5212, which is the upper level, the value is $22.83 a square foot. By messing around with it and changing the numbers and without increasing the value, you get a artificially high shortfall vacancy, and it actually drops the value. And I don't like to put this position forward to the board because I don't believe in it, and that's why I've been making changes and going through the math and making sure that it's correct. The number it's we're not going to change the rest of the numbers because, as I said earlier, it really doesn't amount to a lot of difference in money. It's just, you know, if we have to live with the argument that the basement counts, well, we've chopped it up differently. But it's not appropriate. Now, the only thing here is that the cap rate is much too high. I don't see that this sort of institution would be at that, because essentially this goes to the market. There'll be a change in use, and you'll get a retail tenant or an office tenant in there. It's probably really good for like a medical clinic user, which again is another property that doesn't need special conversions. It's a decent sized building them for parking. So we would, I would adjust this to a rate of 8%, and my number is increased 91048 divided by 0.08. It's 1,138,100, rounded to 1,138,000. And that's at $22.83 a square foot on the upper space, not including basement space. The issues where we differ in capitalization rate is we've been relatively consistent today. They're all hovering around 8%. And this is the only time I'm going to go through this cap rate stuff with you. It's the same for all the properties, but essentially, there is no such thing as a cap rate for a bank. It's a retail or an office usage, and it would be really dependent on the improvement as to what the person looking at it saw that the market being interested in and the building being able to support. Generally, there's nothing to pick from, but the whole period preceding April 1st, 2023 was the market was acting in suspension. Interest rates were so high that sales weren't happening, because if you bought a new site and you had to remortgage, you were no longer going to make a profit, and the vendor stuck in the mindset of lower cap rates from previous. So it was a wait and see time period, which is very, very difficult for anybody to come forward and say what cap rates were in April 1st, 2023. I know from what I've seen so far is the assessment department is using old numbers. Well, we had a change, and I'll show you where the change happened. I'll get to that. Beginning though on page 34, Colliers, when we recognized what was happening, this would have been in 2021, we began going back to the past. And back to the past was always remembering why we have a cap rate in the first place, which was because a cap rate determines if you can pay your mortgage, and if you can pay your mortgage, then it's a viable sale, and it's an investment sale. It's always return on investment. It has got nothing to do with physical factors. Cap rates are all about the money, and the predominant factor is the interest rate. So here we have the spread, as we call it, which is between the 10-year commercial mortgage rate and the average cap rate, 4-point spread, and which narrowed in 22 because people were optimistic high interest rates were going to end soon. But so if your interest rate is in this time really, really low, some commercial rates were as low as 1.75, then that generates a cap rate of on a very, very good property of in the 5s. And when they raise to interest rates to 5% and 5.5%, then the cap rates increase to 8%. This is up to date. This is the factor that we have to deal with. And on page 36 is the Bank of Canada. This is the Bank of Canada Prime. So this isn't the bank prime. So for example, in 21, when the Bank of Canada Prime was at still at 0.50, you saw CMHC insured rates at 1.75%. So a point and a quarter above Bank of Canada Prime. And that was the most competitive rate you could get, only for multifamily. But by April of 2023, the Bank of Canada Prime was 4.75%. so 4.25 points higher, which meant that mortgage rates drove up cap rates by an amount that is almost as high as here. But the difference in the market is that because people were optimistic these wouldn't last forever, is the cap rates did not increase 4.25 points. It was, as the graph before showed you, it was closer to about a 2.5 point increase in cap rates. And this is far more reliable than looking at rates that may have transpired at the time, because for years no one has gone to the trouble of determining what was the assumable mortgage on a sale, which would then define the cap rate. In Collier's cap rate analysis, which is on page 38, is just an idea of the rates that would be in place. And if one were to look at suburban office, 6.5 to 7.5, and then retail, these are it's not a power center, it's not a grocery store, it's closer to a neighborhood strip, 6.25 to 7 for the best product. And that's what we were looking at as for best product. And there was a problem with our cap rate study, which has been entered in evidence in the past, in that we had some bad reporting years. This is the post-reference one on page 39 is verbally, I'm presenting that it's more accurate to April 1st, 2023 on my own investigation. And that showed the suburban office 7.5 to 8.5, and the retail 6.75 to 7.75.
Okay, this is post-reference though, Mr. Newcomb?
No, it isn't. And what I'm saying is it was published post-reference. There was an error.
The numbers aren't post-reference, is that what you're saying?
The numbers are not post-reference. Our Q1 2023 was published in error. Somebody reprinted 21s now instead of 23s. So I went back and amassed, did all the appropriate studies. This is what we were dealing with in the market, and I'm presenting this verbally. And I have a letter from our vice president, which indicates the issue. It was going to be presented as rebuttal, but I think the board is considering changing the rules on rebuttal, so it was a bit late to get it in. I am allowed to present it verbally. Page 41 is a point that the market knows. Underlined, double-digit cap rates seem possible in 2023 for a few select assets, and this isn't the subject property. It's better than that, but this is what the world is telling us, is that the professionals, realtors in the world are telling us, the ones who do investment sales, is cap rates are rising, not decreasing. And when I said about the Collier study, we always bear in mind on page 42 the description of an asset, and a bank or a credit union is not something is tracked. It is inferior to what we do track, and to what anybody else actually tracks, any of the other real estate companies. We have a number of cap rate sales, and this is a work in progress. And what's interesting about it is there was nothing happening out there in the investment world, no real sales. What were happening were sales where there was in the minor world, in the minor investment category, is owner occupants with book rents, and the two office that are actually in that period on page 43 was 155 Carlton at 9%, and 363 Broadway at 12%, Q4 2022. There was one retail sale that was valid, and that's on page 45. But this was a Winnipeg and Calgary portfolio at 7%. And so we don't know how much skewed to Calgary and how much skewed to Winnipeg. This was Artis REIT disposing of some of their assets. The cap rate concept is also to look at the quality of the building and rate them in A's and B's. And I want to be a bit more descriptive here. So page 47 are A, B, C, and then there's D's. And this is an office product. If you go to the retail world, just to get you an idea of how we rank things on page
Mr. Neufeld, I think I'm kind of losing how this relates to the property at hand.
Well, what it relates to the property in hand is that you have market reports, and the market reports take into account 4 classes of properties, and the only ones that have been presented to you are the upper 2. The subject occupies a lower stratus, a lower level. I'm finished within 30 seconds. Page 54 gets you an idea of a class of property. The top this is something like Tuxedo whatever square, the new development. 50, the bottom is the site I mentioned on Artis REIT, which was a larger operation with AAA tenants, national tenants. Going down to a C, this is a local neighborhood strip, and with various users in there, including at one time a credit union. And D is your minor league walk-up strip with no real parking capability, old storefront. So this it's just to put us in the frame of mind of, we're not chasing the Royal Bank's earning capability. We're looking at the real estate, and this would be about a C grade, and that corresponds to the 8% rate that we've selected. See, I told you I only want to go through this once, and I just picked it here. That is my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from the assessors?
I have no question.
No questions, thank you.
No question? Okay, thank you. Ms. Linkletter, any questions for Mr. Neufeld?
I have no questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Seelan, any questions?
No questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
And I have no questions. So any need for summation by the assessment department?
So I would like to emphasize the assessed value of 2025 supposed to be maintained at the current one, which is 2,023,000. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Neufeld, I'm just confirming that you changed your value to 1,138,000. That's correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Based on a rent of 222.83 blended and 8% cap. Is that correct?
Correct. The only change was the cap rate. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And any summation?
Well, I'm just trying to pick a different topic here, and I was speaking on the capitalization rates, and the assessment department has a model. We haven't seen the data that went in. As a market participant, I know there have been no investment sales of financial institutions. There have been 2 in the last decade, and they do not have support for this. They will not find support for this if they focus on it being a bank. Now, if they focus on it being either retail or office, there are a few rates out there. However, that also means the asset should be treated as such in terms of its earning capability, and they haven't. They've segregated to this bank, this mythical, it is a make-believe classification, because the real estate does not get more value if Royal Bank or Bank of Montreal owns it, or if it were a dog grooming facility. It is still just real estate, and this is why we've taken all these to the municipal board, is that there's no such thing as a bank category, and it's a social issue they're chasing, not a market-based real estate issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just before we move on to the next property, I'm just checking to see, does anybody need 5 minutes? Everybody okay to keep going?
I could use 5 minutes, honestly.
Okay, yeah, okay, so let's, we'll come back at 11:20, please.
Thank you so
We'll
much.
take a short recess. Thank you very much. I'll call the meeting back to order. And the next item on our agenda, number 5, is 1375 grant. I will just confirm with the assessors that we're dealing with assessed value here and there's no preliminary issues, correct?
Nope.
Correct. Okay, so please go ahead and read it on to the roll and provide your evidence. Thank you.
So I'm representing the file number 244103, row number 12041120000. The bank is located at 1375 Grant Avenue and the owner is Access Credit Union Limited. Today we are talking about to maintain the 2025 assessed value of 1,761,000 as of a reference date of April 1st, 2023. That is a single story bank built in 2013 and the effective year is 2013. It has the gross floor area of 4,500 square feet with the leasable area is 3,300 square feet. And on moving to the page number 2, we can see the picture of the bank is located at the Grant Avenue and the intersection of the Waverly Street. And the bank has a drive-through ATM. And the bank is currently under the Carpathia Credit Union. And this bank has a sale on December 16, 2010 for the swan value of 580,000. Before that, it has a shell pump there. So my rent comparables are same we represented for the other properties. So I'm just saying it that we have the average rent is $30.76 with the median rent is $30.50 and the low end is $18 and the high end is $47. In the page number 6, we can see the leasable area of the bank is 3,300 with the rent is 33.28. Comes up the potential rent is $109,824. Vacancy rate is 2%, expense is 3%, with the shortfall of $8 per square feet. Cap rate is 5.90%. Comes up the model driven market value is 1,761,000. And page number 7 is a further breakdown of income value summary. And the page number 10 has the income and expense mailer information. It says this property is fully owner occupied and we don't have reported any total leasable area in that expense mailer. And the page number 12, it says this bank has a Carpathia Credit Union since 2013 with no end date and with the leasable area of the bank is 3,300 plus 1,200. I am assuming that is the basement. Yeah, that is the basement area of 1,200. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, any questions?
Yes. In this particular case, you're listing a physical basement area, but not assessing it. Why is that?
Yeah, that's what I noticed too, but I don't have any idea why it is not rented. I need to investigate further about that, why it is not included into that.
And you're saying Carpathia, but it's not Carpathia any longer, is it?
It is Access Credit Union, but in the Google view it's still showing Carpathia, but it is Access Credit Union. They are the owner and that's they are.
Right. So you were talking about Carpathia, but the ownership is
Yeah,
taxed
because
on page 1,
yeah,
correct?
because in the true, but in the page number 12, they say the lease start for Carpathia is in 2013, but no end date. So I'm not sure, we need to investigate further if it's still Carpathia or it is changed to Access Credit Union, because the Google view shows me that it has a Access Credit Union, but when we looked into the picture, it has a Carpathia Credit Union.
On page 10, does it not state that it's fully owner occupied?
It says fully owner occupied, yes.
Okay. And your workup on page 7, is this all done by the model?
Yes, true.
And that includes the capitalization rate of 5.9% is also model.
Yeah, that is also model driven.
I think earlier I'd asked the question, and I think like where does the bank rate derived from? Your bank capitalization rate? What is it? It was a suburban office. Was that the correct answer?
The bank cap rate is driven by the mass appraisal. It's depend upon income and expense mailer we received it, and yeah, so that's where from the model generate the bank cap rate.
Within
But,
within your organization, is this deemed to be office or retail?
That will be the office property.
Okay.
Banks are coming into the office property.
On your page 8, can you explain why your office cap rates are so much lower than the market reports?
So it's coming in the office suburban area, which ranges from the 20 percentile 525 to 675, according to the city of Winnipeg, and our range is our cap rate is 590, which is falling under that category.
Yes. Why is it so much lower than the market reported rates?
It's not low, I can say, because it is in the range of 525 to 675 of the 20th percentile to 80th percentile. So that is in between. So it's not low than that. It's in the like in that category.
I'm sorry, I don't understand that. 5.25 to 6.75, is it within the range of 7 to 8%, as CBRE said? It's
So
not. It's
our cap
outside.
rate is
It's higher, right?
I think the question is, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Neufeld, is why do the city's cap rates come in at a lower rate than the other comparisons on the sheet? Is that correct?
This
Yeah,
property is
that's pretty much it. Yes.
Yeah.
okay. So I assume because it is a low risky property, because it's a newly built 2013 and it has a less, a chance of risk to be rented or to be renovated in the future. That is the reason it is a low cap rate.
And what is that risk based on?
Risk based on the like a market, depend upon like if it is a easily rentable or if it is newly building and people consider about the market value of the property is fair, and that's according to me is a low risk for this property because it's built in 2013.
And who made that decision?
So it's based on the mass appraisal and according to our mass appraisal system. So it's judged by that.
Do you have any sort of examples of what you deem to be a low risk property?
No, I don't have any example on my top of the head.
How many buildings have the city of Winnipeg sold in the last 2 years?
I don't have that data available.
Does the city of Winnipeg ever get involved in negotiations between vendors and purchasers?
I don't have that information. I don't.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Linkletter. Any questions?
Just regarding your page 4, you've got under your sale history, you've got a sale, I think in 2010 for 580,000. I'm just wondering, is that a land sale, I'm assuming?
I'm not sure about that, but I can say it is a land sale. The reason why, because it has a shell pump before that, and the bank just built in 2013. So I'm assuming it is a land sale, but I'm not pretty much sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all my questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Seelan.
No questions, Madam Chair. My questions have been answered. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have no questions. So Mr. Neufeld, give us a second to pull your brief up and we'll proceed. Okay, please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a land sale. It was a gas station before. Carpathia bought it. Carpathia was absorbed into the Access family. and it's owner occupied. There is no rent. The again, I I apologize for the way this is made up. This is forget about the basement area and the rest of it. The true measure is on the upper floor area. The rate would equate to $23.82 a square foot. The rest of the workup is the same. The only thing about this property that differs from the rest is that our brokers, our people who participate in analyzing cap rate sales and rents, deem that this part of town has performed better than the other parts of town we've spoken about in terms of the real estate market. There is more activity at higher rates. So I believe a slightly lower cap would be indicated by this for this reason. And the optimal rate is about 7.5 for this type of property. So I think 7.75 is fair as to what it would transact for given the market conditions of April 1st, 2023. So 59,798 divided by 7.75 is 771,587, 771,587 at a 7.75% cap, rounded to 772,000.
Okay, so you're changing your valuation to 772 based on lowering the cap to 7.75.
Yeah, it's a location. This is about the only part of the city where the cap rates in this quadrant, because there's been some very, very strong activity in the southwest.
Okay.
But again, this is within our Collier's cap rate, which is not as the city's reporting, but listed on page. Make sure you get the one I'm referring to. Page 39, and that's looking at suburban office and retail, and it's not a Class B product, it's a Class C product, and that's why I didn't go as low as that. It's not big enough, and it's single tenant. Whatever the risk is, you're not determining your risk based on a credit union or a bank renting it, just as any user renting it. And as a single tenant, they always carry a higher risk than multi-tenants, because one vacancy equals 100% vacancy. And in our world where you look at the risk level, you're typically with these properties having 10 to 20 tenants. So if you have a loss of one, you're suffering a 5 to 10% vacancy, and that's the thinking that goes into the cap rate as well as the vacancy rate. That's I don't have anything new to add.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the assessors?
I have no question.
Okay. Mr. Seelan, any questions for Mr. Neufeld?
No questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Ms. Linkletter, any questions?
I also have no questions. Thank you.
And I have no questions. So any summation from the city? I take that as a no. Okay,
No,
and Mr.
I'm just saying,
okay, that's okay.
I would like to maintain the assessed value of 2025 for 1375 Grant Avenue at 1,761,000.
Okay,
Thank you.
Mr. Neufeld, any summation on this one?
It's just the same as last time, so you've already heard it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we will move along to item number 6 on our agenda, which is 2785 Pembina Highway. So just give us a second to pull that one up. Okay, and again, just confirming this is assessed value. There's no preliminary issues, correct?
Correct.
All right, so please proceed when you're ready.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Prob, for presenting those last few. You did great. We are looking at file number 24-4089. We are looking at roll number 0306-1205-100. We're now at 2785 Pembina Highway. This is south of Bison Drive. You can look at the pictures on the next pages to see exactly where it is, but we have a 2025 value of $2,672,000. No surprise here, we're looking at another bank. This is a one-story bank built in 2007. It has a gross floor area of 6,345 and a leasable area of 6,345. If we take a look, we're looking at a Bank of Montreal. You can see its entrance on Pembina Highway on page 3. You can see globally where it is on page 4. And if everyone turns to my page 6, again, same comparable as we've went through all day. You can reference those if needed. If we're looking at page 7 now, this is the income workup for this property. So this bank is, again, 6,345 square feet at a model-driven $28.74. We have a 2% vacancy loss, 3% expenses, $8 shortfall, and a model-driven cap rate of 6.45% for the total value of $2,672,000. If we turn to page 11 and specifically page 12, you can see the rent roll for this property. So again, there is 2745 Pembina, Bank of Montreal. You have 6,351 square feet on their mailer. Lease start 2022, ends 2027. And it is at $33 a square foot. So that is what is being sent in by the owner. And I believe that is everything as we went over in-depth banks all day. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld.
Just a point of clarification, we haven't been looking at banks all day, have we? They've been credit unions till now. This is the first bank, correct?
Absolutely. You are correct. This is the first Bank of Montreal we are looking at today.
First chartered bank we're looking at today.
Yes, absolutely. First bank we are looking at today. Wasn't trying to squeeze one by anybody there. Just bank / credit union, places you deposit money, online banking, all that good stuff. Very similar with, well, maybe at the credit union you can get a better mortgage rate sometimes, but that's big difference for me.
Really? So you're bringing up this concept of mortgage rate. I have a client who was looking for $1 billion in financing. Would the credit union be able to provide that?
Again, speaking more as a standard civilian looking for a house mortgage, it was more of just a playful difference between banks and credit unions for us. Not trying to make an actual point. It's completely trying to keep spirits high after we're on our 7th property that is like a credit union / bank.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's but I guess you did bring up a point. This is a credit union is more a residential focused than a bank, a chartered bank, which is residential, commercial, investment, etc. Correct?
Absolutely. I think it depends who you are, what your bankroll is, and what you're looking to do.
Okay.
But I have a bank account on a bank, and then I have a mortgage from a credit union. It's I'm sure it's different for all.
Yeah. Okay. And that's a nice way of saying it. The question is, why doesn't this have a basement?
You know what? I didn't build the building. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know. I don't know why it's I don't know why we don't have a bank basement or what the plan was with it. But we have a reported basement area of 0 square feet.
You got a national banking organization that tells you we don't need a basement, and we have local credit unions who have basements. Is there some concern we might be looking at obsolescence on the basements?
Absolutely, yeah, that could be a reason for it. Absolutely.
Okay, and in regard to the workup page 8, this is all generated by the model?
All model generated income workup on page 7, and then the summary on page 8.
No other questions.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan, any questions for the assessors?
No questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter, any questions?
Just one, Mr. Spacek. Do you know if this premise has a drive-through or not?
Does it have a drive-through? It does, yes.
I thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. And I
Thank you.
didn't have any questions. So Mr. Neufeld, please proceed when you're ready.
Yeah, just once I was just wondering about, I actually wasn't sure about the drive-through either. This will be very, very quick. Because I don't see it in the pictures. Has anyone else picked it up?
If you turn to my page 2, you'll just see the great view of what, from my understanding, the drive-through. It has the halfway down the building.
Oh,
right-hand
yeah,
side.
yeah. Okay. I see it. Yeah. And it was the wall that I missed. Okay. So we, in this particular case, we use the actual paid rent, which, as a freestanding chartered bank, is a good indication of what they will pay for a site developed to their standards with no basement. It is different than a credit union, vastly different. We have used the actual paid rent. And make a long story short, we're like $5,000 apart on NOI, and the differences are we used a higher rent, but also a higher vacancy, which was market driven, not model driven, and we included non-recoverables. So at the end of the day, an appropriate shortfall to a bank that is generating $33 rent, it wouldn't be appropriate to consider that your shortfall is only going to be what the model decided it was at $8, and that is also borne out now on the statements provided. You'll note that the total expenses were $92,000, with the tenant being responsible for their own utilities. So that gives you, just on the $92,000 alone, CAM costs of $15 a square foot, not $8. So their shortfall is inappropriate. So we think our number's a little bit fair. If you no matter how you do it, it's more representative of the world of real estate. Our major difference is capitalization rate, and in this case, as I was saying earlier, this is Southwest Winnipeg. Not so much in the fringe, because most of the action in Southwest is happening a bit further to the west of this of Fort Richmond. But this strip of banks used to be the only one in the south of Winnipeg, and now there's new developments in Waverly West. But it is a good location for them. And on our cap rate issue, when you look at suburban office, that was the Colliers actual rate, 6.5 to 7.5 for Class B. This would be either a lower end of B or upper end of C, because it's a larger footprint. And again, the downside on this has got to be the single tenant issue. But it's been rented to this to this chartered bank since it was built. It was actually done on a cost recovery basis, the original lease, with increases per contract to have to be higher than the cost recovery, but we haven't factored that. So that's our number. It's essentially a difference in the cap rate to the appropriate rate. And that's my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the assessment department?
I have no questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Ms. Linkletter, any questions?
I just have one question about your vacancy. Mr. Neufeld, you had attached a 10.3% on all your briefs. And in regards to the credit unions, is this because of their amalgamation? And I'm just...
No, it's just it's the Johnson report for all of them. which encompasses a broader spectrum of office users. Page, I think I referred this to the right page earlier. Page 4. And so you'll note that, so this is the Johnson Report's analysis of all office in the city, and the total was at 11.4, and the total suburban was 9.2. So arguably this may be 9.2. My concern has always been with these is sample size, and we average it halfway, and I think in this case it's far enough from the downtown core that you may even consider a 9% rate. What I like about Johnson Report is, and I actually have this report right in front of me, and this is the same report, is they actually have a breakdown of every building of 700 buildings that are in office that they rate, rank, and do the rates on, and the city subscribes to this. There is no bank category, of course not a bank category. There's what they do is class. Just want to give you an idea of the suburban A, suburban B, and suburban C. And between A, B, and C, there are only 22 buildings classed in Johnson Report for A, B, or C class. So in the Johnson Report, this would be a D or a miscellaneous. We're just giving it a little bit more. When I said earlier about the cap rate, we just rating it a little bit higher than that. And so that would then be, could be an 8.4% according to Johnson miscellaneous. So I mean, it's a valid point. It might be a touch aggressive.
So you yourself have bumped it to the 10.3.
Yeah, no, well,
Clarification.
you know what? I think you brought up a good point, and I'm not trying to be flattering at all, because I don't do flatter well. But when I was comparing our NOI to the assessor's NOI, I agree it should be a lower vacancy, and so we'll use the assessor's NOI, which should account for our concession that the vacancy should be lower, and but with a 7.5% cap rate. I very much enjoy making changes as we go. I'd just like to show you that we're thinking. So I would suggest that the value would be 2,297,760, 2,297,760, rounded to a nice even 2,300,000.
I thank you. That is all my questions, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Neufeld.
Thank you, Mr. Seelan. Any questions?
Just one quick question. Your non-recoverables, is that 5% again here too?
That's correct.
Thanks. That's all my questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I think my questions have been answered. So, Mr. Spacek, any need for summation here?
No need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
Just our difference is capitalization, and once again, it's a question of being aware of the market April 1st, 2023, and that is at stake here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, Mr. Neufeld, can I just get you to give me your final number there again? I just want to make sure I've got it correct. So you were using the city's NOI at 7.75, and you came to...
No, 7.5.
7.5. Sorry, 7.5. Yep.
And unrounded 2,297,760, and rounded to 2,300,000.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. So the final property on our docket this morning It still is this morning for a few more minutes. 2799 Pembina Highway. And give us a minute here to pull it up. Seems to have, my agenda keeps disappearing on me for some reason. I will just get it back here. Okay, here we go. All right, so just confirming again that we are dealing with the assessed value only, no preliminary issues, so please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're looking at file number 24-4091. This is roll number 0309298535. This is just two doors down at 2799 Pembina Highway. We have a 2025 assessed value of $3,878,000. Again, this is we are looking at a bank on this one, but there's also a second building, and it is a fast food. It is a Burger King. So you will see that we have a number of buildings on this premises too, and actually it was built of 1996 and 1998. So the bank was built in 1996 and the Burger King was built in 1998. So we have two separate leasable areas. We have the bank at 4,505 square feet, and then we have the Burger King, or we have the restaurant at 3,249 square feet. So if you scroll down to page 3, you can see the layout of this property. Again, on Pembina, you'll notice there is an apartment block behind the subject property on a separate roll number. So this area where you turn off into Pembina, you have a bank on the right-hand side, you have a Burger King on the left-hand side, and behind there is a apartment block. You can see it better at the top of page 2. So that's the layout of the land there, but our property today is just the roll number covering the Burger King and the bank. We can see how these the difference on page 6 for my comparables. So I've included my same list of comparables that we've been over today for the actual bank, and then I've included some fast food comparables as our model gives the fast food restaurant a $34.87 a square foot rental rate. You'll see some fast food restaurants included. Comparable one, 1876 Pembina, built in 2022. There's a 15-year lease for $45 a square foot. And then we have 107 Vermilion Road is comparable number 2, 2005 built. We have a 5-year lease from 2019, 2750 square feet at $36.99 a square foot. We have 808 Regent, comparable 3, 2020 built, 20-year lease, 3,104 square feet at $32.86 a square foot. We have 77 Goulet, 2010 built, 10-year, 4,766 square feet at $38 a square foot. We have 3920 Grant. This is comparable 5, 2005 built, 5-year lease, started in 2022, 3,882 square feet at $31.22. And then I've included 2750 Pembina Highway, 2007 built, 20-year lease for 1,700 square feet at $45 a square foot. And these are, so the first comparable, just so you know, they're a Dairy Queen. We have an A&W at comparable number 2, Wendy's at comparable number 3, McDonald's at comparable 4 and 5, and then a Starbucks at comparable 6. So those are some of the fast food restaurants in the city. And then to go to the actual breakdown of these properties, page 7 is the bank. So we have a bank premise, 4,505 square feet at $33.03 a square foot. Followed our standard bank parameters, 2% vacancy, 3% expenses, $8 shortfall, 6.45% cap. This is giving the bank a value of $2,182,000. And then on page 8, we have the restaurant. So this is the Burger King portion of the property. We have 3,249 square feet at $34.87 a square foot. This is a vacancy loss of using our 2025 restaurant parameters of 4% vacancy, 3% expenses, $9 shortfall, and 6.15% cap rate. So this gives the restaurant a value of $1,696,000. And finally, if we scroll down to page 13, the owner has provided the commercial rent roll for these properties. So you'll see the TD Canada Trust has a lease start in 06, again, when it was built, but the last rent increase was in the early 2023, and it's at $31 a square foot currently. And then the Burger King restaurant, again, we are at $33 a square foot for the Burger King. So those are what are being reported. And if you have any questions, that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld.
Yes. You've used a split revenue stream on this, correct?
Correct.
Can the Burger King be sold separately from the bank?
I would assume on the same roll number, if the owner wanted to sell it separately, it would have to be split. I'm not sure on the details of how that works. So truthfully, I can't answer.
It's one title, correct?
Correct. It's currently under one title.
And so legally, you cannot sell these separately. So why would you use a split revenue stream with different caps, different vacancies?
It's just for us to get the most accurate value possible for that portion of the land. So that if one's a Burger King and one's a bank, it would make no sense for us to have it all as a bank or vice versa. It's just to get the best, in our eyes, the most accurate number for the characteristics of that premise.
Do you know do you have an underlying theory that you can rely on to support this?
Honestly, I have no theory in front of me to talk about.
I've always wondered how the city does it. That's why I ask all the time. And
I'm just trying to explain it. If I put it all as one separate type, they'd be asking, "Why aren't you separating this? Why do you have the Burger King as a bank?" And then I wouldn't have an answer for you.
Okay. Now the rents you've applied, the model is applied 33 and 34.87. Did you review the actual paid rents of 31 and 33?
Yeah, that's what's currently being paid to the owner, from my understanding, $31.33. $31.33, as you stated.
So it's a bit high, lower than what your model has generated, correct?
Yeah, correct. The Burger King is currently paying 33. Our model has generated a value of 34.87, and then the bank is currently, the owner is receiving $31, and our bank rent on this one is at $33. So again, there's slight difference for sure.
Okay. And I'd asked you the question earlier about tenant improvements and amortization. Now, you are aware that restaurants are notorious for having tenant improvements in their leases? Are you aware of that?
I would believe you. I don't deal with too many restaurants, to be honest, in the office section. So I haven't read too many restaurant leases.
And you obviously do not have the leases on any of these comparables you have?
I do not have them in front of me, no.
Okay. And in terms of, I've asked before about capitalization rates. Do you have any capitalization rates, and you believe in your model making on standalone restaurants being sold?
I have no direct capitalization rate evidence in front of me.
Okay. And how about multi-tenanted retail office sites? Anything like that?
Yeah, I have no direct evidence for a restaurant and bank on the same parcel selling. Not in front of me.
Well, would not an investor look at the riskiest part of the proposition and rather than try to average it out? Or do you know that?
No, I'm not big into the restaurant investment world. I don't personally know how what would be your priority as an investor. I just can show how we have it split up to best represent the characteristics, and then if there's something you're presenting differently, happy to look at it.
Okay, those are my questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter, any questions?
Yes, just a couple. Sorry, I've got somebody doing yard work and it's very loud in here.
You sound fine.
Okay, good. Mr. Spacek, I'm just wondering, I missed on your fast food restaurant comparables 1 through 6.
Yep.
Sorry, could you just go through them again, what they are? Because I only caught 2.
No problem. The first comparable is a Dairy Queen. The second comparable is an A&W. The third comparable is a Wendy's. The fourth comparable is a McDonald's. The fifth comparable is a McDonald's. And the sixth comparable is a Starbucks.
Okay. So none of your comparables then are a Burger King?
No, I didn't have any Burger Kings.
Okay. And I'm going to suggest to you that your comp 6, which is the Starbucks, is not a good comparison because they don't sell burgers and fries.
Yeah, again, just trying to find small building, fast food, like go in, buy, I agree they don't sell burgers and fries.
Okay. That's all my questions at this time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Seelan. Any questions?
Yes, I'm just curious about your caps. We have two different cap rates here, and I'm trying to understand where they actually fit in with your table.
You know what? I'd have to look at for the retail. I'm not sure if they have a fast food one separated. They don't. So again, yeah, they don't fit into this chart because there's no comparisons for us to make to Colliers, CBRE, Cushman Wakefield, again on banks or there's no row for fast food. So they just, sadly, there's not a row for them to fit in with correctly that I can compare them to.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions, Madam Chair.
Okay, I'm just both of these are both leased properties. There's not an owner in either one of these.
No, they're both
both
leased
leased?
out.
Okay.
Yeah, both properties, and
Okay.
it's all on
Thank you.
page 13 if you'd like to see the separate leases.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that neither of these were the owner. So that's,
You are correct.
yeah, thank you. Okay. All right, Mr. Neufeld, when you're ready.
Thanks. I didn't know there was a DQ on Pembina Highway. Okay. The subject property is a bit strange, but this was actually part of a larger parcel, and the same owner has these two sites up front, as well as the last bank we heard, and an apartment in the back. And they're originally on a larger parcel, and it was subdivided to provide separate titles for the the apartment at the back. And actually, it wasn't subdivided. It was three titles. They changed the borders on them, and that way you don't pay dedication. But that's the background for this. So now we have three separate roles. There is an easement going through this site to get access to the apartment at the back, as there is for the Bank of Montreal next door. We haven't factored that into the value. They seem to enjoy a symbiotic relationship in terms of their demand on parking, but the paid rents are 31 and 33, and they were negotiated arm's length. So we think that they're far more pertinent than a bunch of table rents. And I think it's obvious that in the assessor's workup that some of these had very high tenant improvements amortized in the lease rates. And I believe he does have access to this information, because I know number one went to the board, and the assessor, not this particular assessor, but the assessment department, had an argument presented to them. I think in light of what we know about tenant improvement issues, that the paid rents, which were free of that, are more reliable. And that's the number one issue. Number two issue is the vacancy. And in this case, we blended the office with the standalone restaurant. And Johnson Report actually has a vacancy rate for standalone restaurants. We would never go out on a limb and put a lot of weight on this by itself, because the sample size is extremely small. The sample size is only 364,000 square feet, and it's citywide. But so we've used half the rent at half the vacancy at 4% and half at 11.4 for office. That gets to 7.7, and again, non-recoverables 5%, structural reserve, and the shortfall, which was determined by the actual cost to carry, which I believe that the assessor on his page 12 has that number, and I can't read it. It looks like I can't read it, like maybe 68,000, not including utilities. So essentially, we're well over 100,000 with utilities. So our number at 1487 is appropriate. Oh, I see that. Sorry, our workup was below. It's 1142 on the statement, and we've added 245 for utilities. In this case, the NOI 204,000, and as far as the capitalization rate goes, the question I was asking the assessor before about does an investor average these out? No, they're always thinking worst case scenario, and everyone gets tarred with the same brush as the saying goes. It's the weakest link is where the risk level falls, and it's fast food restaurants are generally a weak link. Now, Burger King has a bit of a history in Canada and in Winnipeg, but that also included closing half their stores at one point. So it's not going to be seen as a strong investment with a good covenant. And I'm talking about the business covenant because that's what the investors are going to be looking at. Replacement use, though, is the interesting thing. Lots of old banks have different uses because it is just a shell retail / office. The alternate use for a restaurant is much more limited because the amount of interior modification required. Half of it is kitchen with hoods, grills, and non-permeable, non-flammable, demising walls, and a lot of them because that's the way they're built. And I do qualify as an expert on this. I was at one point in my life part of the International Committee for Franchise Advisory Committee for a major international restaurant where I was the Canadian representative and our head office was in Minneapolis. And we got into, restaurant design and building was part of our mandate. So it's just very, very, bottom line is taking one and demising and redoing it. But as a joke, 1450 McPhillips was a restaurant and turned into a credit union at a fairly high expense. So it does work. It does happen. It just costs money. So your investor is going to be looking at those. What's the alternate use? How much am I going to have to spend to convert it later? And that's an upward pressure on the capitalization rate. And even though this is in Southwest Winnipeg, I think that the previous one was a better risk to an investor. And I see no reason to consider anything lower than 8%. That value is $2,558,000, no changes. And note that this is another situation that's under appeal. The reasons for appeal aren't simply we're looking for something better. We're just looking for something fair. This style of valuation that the assessment department creates is not representative of market transactions. Again, the bottom line on this is that the risk is based on the worst case scenario, not the optimism of maybe everybody's going to be fine. And that's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Spacek. Any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Mr. Seelan, any questions?
No questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Ms. Linkletter, any questions?
Just one quick question, Mr. Neufeld. You may have spoken about this, but the vacancy on this one is 7.7. Is that because you've got the two properties together?
Yeah, we looked at averaging the two different styles, and it seemed to be a fairly good number. I think it's to me it seems reasonable.
Okay. I thank you. That's all my questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I did not have any questions. So, Mr. Spacek, any requirement for summation here?
No need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
Well, this is the last one, right?
It's the last one.
Okay. So the message you're getting from me on all of these is banks, credit unions, they're just real estate. And the model the city is set up is not appropriate. It does not comply with the Municipal Assessment Act. They're chasing business income. They're chasing the user. And this resonates a lot with normal people because we look at banks make a lot of money. And that's been the problem. I take exception to that and I appeal everything to the municipal board. And I'm not saying that, I don't want you, please don't take that the wrong way. I don't mean that in any other way. except to let you know that we believe in the strength of our convictions because we sell these properties. It's just bricks and mortar. It's not special. And it should be treated that way. There should not even be a separate category in the assessment system for it. And that's point one. Point two is that the capitalization rates that I've been seeing put forward to date on the appeals I've looked at have really forgotten the fact that, as we've shown on our analysis, and this one, it's page 35, the primary component, primary issue on capitalization rates, it's a rate of return. Everybody agrees on that. So what is it a return on? It's on investment. It's much less a physical factor as the ability to generate income and to pay your mortgage. When interest rates rise, cap rates rise. When interest rates dropped, cap rates dropped. And they follow each other. On April 1st, 2023, the Bank of Canada prime rate had increased from the previous year from 0.5% to 4.75%. The assessment department showed no change. As a matter of fact, it looks like they've dropped their cap rates from 2 years ago. They're lower. That's mythical. The world, we sell properties here, and we're dealing with the impact of someone buys a new property, they've got to get a new mortgage. The return has to be higher or the sale doesn't go through. There's a lot of wait and see in our market right now. The transactions that have gone through have indicated that there is optimism the rates will drop, but they have to deal with reality. You need a rate of return that makes it able for you to pay your mortgage. And that's really the bottom line. This has been missed. There is no such thing as a 5% cap, period. Unless you have a CMHC guaranteed rate, which is only applicable to multifamily residential and single family, not to commercial properties. Thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you. So we have heard all of the items on our agenda this morning. So this hearing is now adjourned, and I want to thank everybody so much for your presentations and your participation. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good
Bye.
afternoon.
Thanks.
I'll go turn off the stream.